word that comes to mind when I think about Jesus is powerful.
Kind.
I think about the word peace.
Loving and caring.
Life, because he sacrificed his life to give us ours.
Is Jesus God, or is God Jesus, or are they the same person?
What's it like being the most powerful person to ever walk on earth?
What did he do on his downtime?
Why does he love us so much?
He's a person who loves and cares for me.
My role model.
A very safe place to talk to.
Jesus is a friend.
If I'm dealing with anything, I know I can go to him and he'll help me through it.
It's an exciting time around Hope because we're officially moving into the Easter season. Easter is one of my favorite holidays. I love Easter because it gives us a chance to remember all that Jesus has done for us. It gives us a chance to get to know him in a new way. And that's a really big deal because knowing Jesus changes everything. So over the next 5 weeks, we're gonna be asking this question: who's Jesus? And if we're honest, I think we'd all asked this question before in one way or another. Before our time today, we asked what questions you have about Jesus. So before we jump in to discovering more about who Jesus is today, let me tell you a quick story. When I was in middle school, I had to switch schools. I left all my friends behind again. Yeah, this wasn't my first time having to switch schools. I have gone to 3 different schools before having to move to this new one, which makes it 4. And every time it was the same thing. I would walk on campus alone and afraid. It always felt like everybody was staring right at me. And the teacher would always say, "We have a new student today." And for me, that was the worst part. Oh yeah, and feeling completely alone. Have you ever been there? The truth is, we all know what it's like to feel alone. Even if you're in a room full of people, when no one really knows you, it can be a really lonely place. You probably know what I mean. Even if you have a group to hang out with, a constant conversation with friends on your apps, 20 group texts going on at the same time, a team to support you on and off the field, a group of friends who you sit with at lunch, you still might deal with the feeling of loneliness. Maybe you even have a little voice in your head that tells you, you don't really fit in, or no one really knows you, or you'll never really feel connected with someone. But what if I told you that you're not alone? For starters, you're definitely not the only one who feels this way. Everyone struggles with this feeling of being disconnected or alone at times. But beyond that, you're not alone because of Jesus. Now listen, I know you might be thinking, not alone because of Jesus? What does that even mean? Well, I say it because I think it's true. And maybe you do too. Maybe the idea of Jesus being with you makes things feel better for you. Or maybe the idea of Jesus being with you is just confusing. Maybe the idea of Jesus, God's Son, sent to earth to save us, doesn't change anything for you. The idea of God who seems far away, old, and distant is not exactly helpful. It doesn't feel helpful when your friends leave you out, or you feel like an outsider in your own family, or when you feel disconnected. In those moments, what does Jesus really mean for you? If that's how you feel, I get it, but stick with me because I think that by asking questions about who Jesus is, we'll discover just how much knowing Jesus really does change everything, including when we feel disconnected. Conversations about who Jesus really is come up a lot around this time of year. Easter celebrates the moment in history when Jesus died and then came back to life. And while this is really amazing and incredible thing that happened, it's also something that has made people ask a lot of questions along the way. Questions about who Jesus is and what his death on the cross means for us. Since it's okay to ask questions when it comes to our faith, I want to dive into some of that stuff with you today. To kick things off, we're going to jump right into the moment at the end of Jesus' life, but let me give you a little bit of background before we get started. Jesus lived in ancient Israel and grew up in a first century Jewish culture. A huge part of life for those people was going to temple. The temple was where people went to worship God. It was also a place where a bunch of important stuff in town happened, and certain parts of the temple were for certain people only. For example, if you weren't Jewish, you had to stay on the outside. Women that were Jewish could only go in so far, and men could go inside but only certain places, and priests could go further. You see, the whole thing was built so that people kept their distance from the center of the temple, a place called the Holy of Holies. That's where God was. And because God was so holy, people couldn't get close. So that part was sanctioned off by a curtain. In fact, it was the most important part, and only the most important priest could go in once a year. The point of this little history lesson is that the culture Jesus lived in had a lot of separation. The people literally couldn't go behind the curtain. They were disconnected. People were separated from each other, and most importantly, everybody was separated from the place where God was. Without Jesus, everybody would have stayed separated from God. Back then, people asked a lot of questions about Jesus too. Why did Jesus come to earth? What was he trying to do? Was he really the Son of God? Some people thought he was just a really good teacher. Other people thought he was a political leader who would overthrow the Roman rule. Nobody expected that same Roman government would actually arrest Jesus and sentence him to death. But they did. And when it was happening, it was awful. Jesus was tortured, beaten, insulted by those who were torturing him. But as this was happening, God was using this moment to do so much more. Check this out. And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. This is a huge deal. Remember the curtain from the temple? The one that separated God from everybody else. At the moment that Jesus died, the curtain ripped apart. The days of separation were over forever. Before, only once a year could the most important priest get really close to God. But in a moment, Jesus changed everything. Jesus made it perfectly clear that there would never be separation between God and God's people ever again. It changed everything for the people back then, and it could change everything for us today as well. Your friends may feel distant, but God isn't. You may feel like other people don't know you or want to be close to you, but God does. You may feel like you have to be good to be around God, but you don't. Nothing you do or don't do can separate you from God, the God who loves you. One of Jesus' friends, a guy named John, wrote down everything about his experience with Jesus while he was here on earth. John saw it all, including Jesus' death and resurrection, and it changed everything. And I think one of the things John tells us that Jesus said helps us understand who Jesus is. This is what he said. I no longer call you servants because a servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. We are friends with Jesus. That's just so amazing to me. Jesus as my friend. I love that thought. But as cool as it is, I think that there's more to it than that. He's not just saying that we're friends and we can hang out and go camping and stuff. It's we're friends because he turned the world upside down and defeated death and tore a curtain in two to prove that we're connected. You and I are connected. From now on, we're always going to be connected to God. My death on the cross made sure that that was possible no matter what. We can never be separated, and you are not alone. In other words, because of Jesus, you can be connected to God. This is what Easter means for us, and this is who Jesus really is. He is the connecting point from God to us. Isn't that amazing? There's no curtain between you and God. God chose you, and he's going to be close to you no matter what. Maybe you've never thought about Jesus like a close friend. Maybe you've believed the stories of who Jesus is from your grandma or somebody at church or the Christians on TikTok. As we begin this series, I want to challenge you to find out for yourself. I want you to feel like you can ask the question, who is Jesus? Because it's okay to ask. That's actually one of the reasons that we have small groups, so that we can remind each other of what's true about who Jesus really is. That even when we feel far away, that there's no separation because of Jesus, we can be connected to God. For some of you, this might be the first time you've ever realized that you can be close to God. If that's you, a huge step you can take today is talk to a trusted adult about it. Talk to them about what it means to connect with God, to follow God, and to grow in your relationship with God. These are important people who want to help you understand how knowing Jesus can change your life. Then I want you all to try this. The next time you find yourself feeling lonely or disconnected or separated, go to God. Tell God how you feel. Spend some time with him. Reach out to a friend that you know will encourage you to remember what's true about God. Listen to worship music or pray. Write down your thoughts in a journal to God. Whatever this looks like for you, take a step to connect with a God that loves you when you feel disconnected. Because no matter what, you can remember because of Jesus, you can be connected with God.